Hello and welcome to How to Enhance Customer Engagement in the Texas Market. Our webinar today is with Navigant in partnership with InfoCast Events. Today I have with me Laura Manns, Director of Navigant. And today's webinar is actually a preview of what you can experience at InfoCast's upcoming ERCOT Market Summit. You can join policymakers, utilities, solar, wind, IPP, and other executives to explore the potential solutions and opportunities at ERCOT Summit. Hear from ERCOT market leaders covering over 15 interactive panels and presentations, and we have a lot of great speakers, including ERCOT and FTI Consulting. And to learn more or to register, please visit www.infocastinc.com/ERCOT. Again, that's www.infocastinc.com/ERCOT. And before we get started with everything as well, please make sure to type your questions in the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of your screen, and we'll make sure to answer your questions if time permits. Thank you so much, and now I'd like to welcome Laura.
Thank you very much, Catherine. I really appreciate being here today, and thank you to the people that have decided to join our webinar. So my webinar today is focused on the Texas market, and I do hope you'll attend the conference and find more detailed information. Obviously, we're not going to be able to cover everything going on in Texas in 45 minutes, but we'll do our very best. And so my background is more of a wholesale. I'm going to start at this from a wholesale lens, and I've been working on the ERCOT market for many, many years. There are some interesting drivers for change in the ERCOT market. Like many parts of the country, ERCOT is trying to sharpen wholesale prices, find ways to encourage more customer participation, demand-side participation. And as with any policy change, things sometimes move slowly. And so what I'll discuss also in this presentation is the rate of change at the wholesale is more and more matched by the rate of change at the customer level as technology and data and information become a larger part of the picture. Next slide, please. So when we talk about the ERCOT market, the wholesale market, some of the changes under consideration at the moment are real-time co-optimization. And so that's talking through how we consolidate the markets for energy, ancillary services, reliability products into a market that products can be traded across all time frames. And so the expectation is that this will come out with sharper prices and essentially more efficient pricing in the long run. That this is a disruptive change, lots of details, lots of money to get the systems going and running, and up to $40 million has been projected, and perhaps up to 4 years to make these changes. So it's a slow march towards something that ultimately will provide benefits, at least from everybody's best projections. Some of the other changes under consideration for, again, sharper pricing, more location-based pricing are marginal losses, which would show more about what's actually going on the system as far as losses being currently averaged around 2 or 3% on the transmission system. Don't always give the signal to customers about when it might be valuable to use energy, not use energy. But marginal losses comes with a need to provide a set of rebates, which can get very complex. Locational reserves, which may change the prices in certain locations, give more indication about when transmission is scarce or not. Again, a topic of discussion and something I think you'll hear more about in the meeting. And then one of the things that has been discussed and would directly have impacts on customers is the changes for transmission planning and cost recovery. This idea was floated My impression or interpretation of where this is at the moment is that it's very, very complex. It has far-reaching implications and probably isn't a subject that will get addressed in the short run or enough to make meaningful business decisions for people on this call. So I just want to mention it as part of the 4 legs of the stool in the proposal in ERCOT, but probably not something that will come to pass in the near future. Next slide, please. And so in the presentation I have here, just to talk a little bit about each of these, which I've done, is more details for reference. Again, the whole goal in the market price reform, or the improvement in price formation, is to get sharper prices. It will level, in theory at least, the playing field between generators participating and loads participating in the wholesale market and providing solutions for reliability. This comes with the understanding that the barriers to entry to being in the wholesale market are lowered. Right now, there's the need to be qualifying a queasy. So you need to qualify to be a market participant or represent a market participant in ERCOT. So just be on the lookout. If this is something of interest, I suggest you go to the conference, get more information on how this is shaping up and how the rules are changing for participation. Next slide, please. So customer participation right now is kind of difficult. ERCOT doesn't have sharp prices. They have a short forward-looking window, and so it's really kind of hard for small customers, large customers, small customers to participate. And so in many of these arenas, the benefits outweigh the costs, but there's also political hurdles at the moment. And so the appetite for change, even I would say from 6 months ago, has somewhat diminished. So these improvements could create cost savings, but it'll take a while. And so meanwhile, what's happening, and you can go to the next slide, please, is that technology, especially on the customer side, is catching up and in some cases surpassing the pace of change at the wholesale market. And so what we see is the shift toward downstream value creation, creating value and opportunities closer to the customer interface. And so we see many new non-traditional providers targeting the energy space as a means of changing their value proposition and extending their value proposition. So innovative technology offerings are bringing in many new participants into homes and businesses, some that are kind of unexpected, some that would be more expected. And the challenges from new entrants might be product-oriented, it might be service-oriented, and it sometimes is just a case of strengthening a brand or a consumer relationship that's something that's already present in the customer's home. Next slide, please. So as behaviors evolved and customers are changing their preferences, they're becoming more energy savvy, some becoming more environmentally conscious, and there's a lot of expectation that the customer service experience needs to be seamless, it needs to be effortless. And many of us have stories about, not knowing what's going on with our energy or our utility, and our lights are out and there's no information. And that's changed significantly over the past few years. Customers really want better control of their energy usage and are willing to spend money to get better control and better transparency about when would be a good time to change their energy usage. There's a great degree of emphasis on choice, not only for who is the energy provider, but what is the mix of the energy portfolio being provided. There's personalized services, especially more proactive, pushing toward the customer, data information, getting much more information to the customer about their usage, their trends, their neighbors, and how they fit into like-minded groups or similarly situated groups. Obviously, digital access is a big changer with apps and iPads and technology that's transportable and remote for customers to have that digital experience. And then also low cost. Customers are looking to find ways to save money, and as much as it was assumed that customer use was an inelastic, customers were inelastic and not responsive to price, over time that's proven to be quite different, and there is a lot of customer behavior change based on how prices have also their opportunities to save. Next slide, please. So there are drivers of erosion, and energy companies have been looking at, energy companies being utilities and energy service providers, what are some of the drivers of erosion and how to detect them. And so as you can imagine, a poor customer experience would erode loyalty of a customer to its energy provider. Rising retail prices and the costs being directly attributable to a customer would erode loyalty. The lack of a value proposition, what am I getting for my experience, would also be an indicator. Reliability, power quality issues, this might be even more important to large customers that are very power quality sensitive. Is the reliability there? Is the resiliency there? The ability to recover if something happens on the grid? How do these reliability and resiliency issues impact different segments of the customer, especially for our participants from Texas that have had bad weather experiences lately? It's bringing that all to the fore. And then also a weak brand image or reputation. So how is the company or the corporation that's interacting with the customer, how are they perceived, and do I feel good as a customer interacting with this particular corporation? And then there are the drivers that I talked about at the beginning, the market drivers. Do we have enough competition? Do we have economics being driven all the way down into the customer experience? And then also the regulations and policies. And so what's happening with mandates to build transmission? How does that reflect in my customer bill? What are the preferences that come about through regulatory policy as opposed to preferences that are coming through the customer experience? And there seems to be, at least in my opinion right now, a little bit of a disconnect between the policy drivers in the wholesale market and some of the preferences on the customer experience side. So if you could page down, we have another piece to this slide, please, Catherine. Thank you. And so what happens is these customer erosion experiences allow customers to develop a scorecard, or an energy provider to develop a scorecard that helps them get a sense of where they sit with the customer or where they sit with a target market of customers that they're looking to acquire. And so along this, the metrics around the customer experience and how to make sure that any negative indicators can come up with a mitigation plan to move that into a more positive direction. Rising retail prices, there might be an opportunity to do budget billing or to find some other way of doing an intervention. I hate to call it something like that, but something that would allow customers to have an efficiency improvement or something that would help them manage their rising prices. The lack of a value proposition may also be just a perceived lack of value proposition. So really engaging with the customers, finding out through surveys and other means what drives, at least in the customer's mind, what value they would like and how to adapt to be in that space with the customer. around reliability and quality issues, and that's a pretty measurable part. So the traditional measures of KD, SAFE, NAFE, all of those, and then not only looking at the customer from the traditional measures, but is there extra equipment? Is there extra something that can be done, especially where customers are very quality sensitive, to put sort of behind the meter or on-premise equipment that would help improve power quality. And we're seeing this, for example, with microgrids that want to put storage or generation or something on site so that power quality is not always dependent on the outside grid. And then what is the brand image? And so again, getting in touch with the customer, finding out what are their experiences and how to change that in the minds and the eyes of the client. The market drivers, I think we can see that it kind of ties back to that 4CP for transmission that I talked about earlier. That in one way is a real value to customers that can do an interruption on peak days that can significantly reduce their bill. And so that's something that would be, a regulatory driver, a policy driver. And then also, how does that work as a market driver? So those are some of the things. The efficiency that we're talking about in the wholesale market may ultimately wind up as a savings for customers. So next slide, please. And the point of this is that there are ways to develop metrics that will allow energy service providers to gauge where they stand in relation to customer perception and then take mitigation measures to improve that. Navigant is really focused on the future of the utility industry, and it's being very animated by the energy cloud. And so the transition of the utility business from a one-way business from a central location out to the customer to a two-way business, transactional, interdependent, is really enabled with new technology. It's not only two-way energy flows, but it's two-way information flows. It's new technologies that allow flexibility, digitization, and as I mentioned already, resiliency and changing that customer experience. So as we transition from the centralized kind of inflexible power grid, it allows all of the customer resources to also act as resources to help provide reliability to the power grid, resiliency to the power grid, and then again, to go back to my microgrid analogy, the grid within the grid, there's a whole additional level of being able to generate for self-use or generate to sell back to the grid. And the utility business models are transforming to help support this two-way information flow. And so in certain parts of the country, we see the notion of a platform provider and ways that customers can use the energy cloud to drive their business and get additional benefits, power quality, resiliency, information about their use, ways to manage their use that were just unheard of, not even thought about 10 years ago. Next slide, please. And so, this little slide, what should utilities do? And maybe expanding that to what should energy service providers do as well. And so if we look on this timeline, really what we're looking at is the first step of digitizing core services. So being able to digitize billing and payments, outage communication, meter reading, being fast at connecting new customers, being flexible and nimble in correspondence and communication, and then also self-service transactions as a customer able to either use a web-based technology or something other than the traditional phone call through the help desk to get the basic services that they're looking for. The next step up in moving toward the new future of energy is to look at customer engagement. How am I interacting with the customers? Am I providing them proactive alerts rather than reactive alerts? Am I providing them with new insights on how they might experience a new service, a new way of managing their energy, a new way of billing coming up? And then also, am I providing customer analytics and ways for customers to understand their usage and their experience with the energy company? In the extended value proposition, we consider things about things like new pricing, new ways to price. I'm based in California, and we've come up with new tariffs for EV charging, for example. And so that would be an example of new pricing, new products. And then again, thinking about how do we personalize products? Do we provide warranties? Do we provide rebates or upgrades? What is it that can be offered to the customer that would particularly appeal to them? And then again, energy-related advice and consulting, from something as easy as a home energy audit to something as complex as how do I establish my home or business as a microgrid that has generation, supply, storage. What else can I do either to manage my bills or to become a participant in the energy market? And then we also see energy contract management. So companies that come in and say, I'll take over your bill and you just don't worry about it. Here's a fixed price that we'll agree to, and I will take over managing your interface to the utility and to the market. And so as we move to this new business model with a new customer experience, perhaps distributed energy strategies, new customers, new services, and really coming about through digital solutions, through technology-enabled solutions, through customer experience that has an intensity and a personalization that we haven't seen before, we can really get sophisticated energy service providers running on digital platforms that provide not only basic services, but can provide categories of premium services, either for quality or for environmental or other experiences. So what we see now in the industry emerging are the solar PV and storage, creative financing, creative repair options, creative maintenance contracts, and also creative energy management contracts. We see smart EV charging, and then again, the setting the platform for ultimately transactive energy, which becomes much more decentralized and continues that movement away from central station toward the customer and becomes sort of a network of interactions that really are completely dispersed in the cloud or in the platform. Next slide, please. So the challenge for utilities is how to maintain reliability in a very traditional way while simultaneously creating the flexibility and the agility necessary for innovation. And so if we strike the balance, on the one hand, we're requiring traditional reliability. We haven't really changed any of the quality or customer service measures. And so we look at, are there ways to more efficiently operate the utility? Are there customer service enhancements that can be offered? Is there a way to come up with perhaps performance-based incentives that increase profits, or a way to free up capital for reinvestment? And on the other side, there's agility. So how do we come up with new products and services and new business models and new revenue streams, especially from the utility perspective? How do we remain in our position of essentially provider of last resort and where customers ultimately rely to an enabler of the new business model in the utility? And so coming up with the platforms, coming up with the data and the information and the innovation is all going to be key in the future. Next slide, please. So some game-changing moves, and these are some case studies that Navigant has done. I have a reference at the end if you would like more information about these specific studies. My colleague Aida is available, not on this call, but after this call if you'd like more information. So she has identified these as examples. Green Mountain Power has done a lot with building what they call the utility of the future, their ecosystem for customers, and this is still within its vertically integrated franchise. So they offer personal energy management. It's a comprehensive home control and convenience offering that manages every consuming device in the home and allows control to increase comfort and save money. The NRG Portable Power offers NRG's portable power solutions, so customers can break free from the outlet, charge the smartphones with the NRG Power Pack, and then related to EV infrastructure, identifying that NRG's EVgo has been developed, it's expanding, and it's interconnecting a network of EV charging stations throughout the state, and it includes several charging power options. And so they essentially offer new age energy products directly to customers and have really gone beyond the traditional way of thinking about the customer relationship to something that's very interactive, very personalized, and comes with small devices that can make large changes. Next slide, please. So the key takeaways that Navigant is offering today is not only is the wholesale market changing and trying to provide a platform for customers to be more interactive and able to have sharper pricing and sharper interaction with the wholesale market, but also leverage the parallel and very rapid change of digitalization and information technology. And so as utilities pursue their transformation journeys, they'll need to become more adept at anticipating customer needs. And it's not only the utilities, obviously energy service providers, anyone that's interacting with customers with their energy experience will need to know how to market new technologies, how to identify new channels, how to look at bundling product and service options, and also how to have innovative pricing offerings and not only pricing offerings, but customized offerings that might include a green adder or a green benefit or a power quality benefit or something that's appealing to a certain group of customers that might not be ubiquitously desired by all customers. So the first step, just to repeat that little stair step that we talked about, the first step is to digitize and then automate. And so we see in certain cases that we have automated metering that was digitized, and then it went to two-way metering that could be interactive as an example. And so another example is self-service that has become the norm, and call it frictionless customer experience, which will drive operating costs down, but also drives the customer experience up, more immediate, not holding on the phone, being able to exactly get done what they'd like in a short amount of time with a minimal amount of effort. And then move from transaction to a relationship. And so I think the word prosumer was started about 10 years ago, but we really do see the ability of proactive consumption or not consumption, depending, and much more amounts of control based on a high degree of information. So customers can choose to either manage their use, such as we saw in the Green Mountain Power example, that they can know what devices are using, they can change how their devices are behaving, or they can transport and be able to be completely off the grid. And so what we're seeing are more and more engaged customers, more and more active customers, and not only I think not only is it important to enable that, but it's important to make that easy. It's important to make that what we might call frictionless, that the least amount of effort for the most amount of gains, and that's what the new energy cloud is offering. And then help leverage businesses. So creating customized energy products and services for, and again, we say here utilities, but energy service providers, our customers, especially high intensity customers, interested in creating a microgrid so that they can self-provide or get a higher degree of resiliency or reliability, and really make that happen closer to where they have control of it. And then also have regulations and tariffs that allow the sales of excess and become a distributed and transactional experience for the customer. And then also be able to change the experience of the larger customers based on drivers, for example, sustainability. So a lot of larger companies now have a chief sustainability officer and are trying to drive the experience for not only their energy themselves as an energy user, but for the employees themselves that have sustainability preferences in mind. How do they have a better sense of control? I work with microgrids that have sort of time and quality critical laboratories. So how do they make sure that in doing energy management, that something like a laboratory that needs 10/10 reliability and power quality can be alongside of another building that might be able to have its lights turned off, essentially all night. And so how do we customize that to a building, to a floor, to a classroom or a laboratory? And that can be made available by using information and digitalization and the energy cloud. And then again, customers want predictability, and they want good quality at reasonable cost. And that's kind of a universal driver for many customers. But how could the utility or the energy service provider provide a cost benefit of getting additional predictability or quality at a predictable amount of cost, and work with customers to give them a very tailored solution for their business and their particular circumstance. Next slide, please. So these are my colleagues. If you happen to be in Texas, I'm going to start at the bottom, because if you happen to be in Texas, Navigant has an office right up the street in Austin, and our managing director there, Dan Bradley, will be available. I think he will be at the conference, but if he's not at the conference, please come and stop by our office and spend some time visiting with Dan. Ada, as I mentioned, is she's in our Vancouver, Canada office, currently doing a lot of work in the U.S. on the customer experience. And so specific questions that I wouldn't be able to answer today, I would refer you to Aida, and not only based on this presentation, but she's doing a lot of work right now on the customer experience, the metrics scorecard, and how to change the relationship with the customer based on using technology, metrics, and the energy cloud. And then me at the top, I'm Laura Mans, and I will be on the phone for about 10 more minutes to answer questions. And so I'll turn it back over to Catherine to say anything else that she would like to say before we do that.
Thank you so much, Laura, for your presentation today. As she mentioned, we're going to have a Q&A session, so please type your questions in the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of your screen, and I will ask them. Let's see. Well, actually, I have a question. You mentioned the energy cloud and how it's the new business model and how people are moving towards that. I was wondering if you had any examples of companies who are, with considering the energy cloud and are moving towards that new model.
I'm sure there are many examples, but one of the examples I have experience with that I think is kind of interesting is in California, the university is using the energy cloud to actually change where they're using their energy based on time and prices. And so moving, for example, computing from one supercomputer to another remotely located supercomputer to take advantage of pricing and take advantage of, solar panels that could be sustaining the computations, and then moving it to another place as the sun changes or as prices change. I think is a great example of sort of the future of innovation that I've personally seen could be possible with the energy cloud.
Thank you so much. And I know you mentioned, digitizing and also, I think, reaching out to the new generations with different ways of customer engagement. I've seen some utility companies use, apps and a lot of different ways of kind of sharing information and rewarding those prosumers. Do you have anything to share with that type of customer engagement?
Sure. So thank you for that question. One of the companies that I know we've targeted as kind of a thought leader in this area is a company called O-Power. They've been around a while and really have kind of made energy use a bit more fun. So for those of us that don't look at, LMP curves all day long and just live our lives with, warm coffee and cold ice cream, just having neighborhood challenges. And again, I've done a lot of work in the academic space, so I've seen this to a student on college campuses, just fun sorts of challenges about energy comparisons or energy contests, and especially in neighborhoods with their homes. And it sort of makes that energy experience, saving energy, much more fun and much more approachable and friendly. And so that, I think, would be one of the better examples that I've seen with companies that are trying to really be more customer focused and, again, outside of folks that work specifically in the energy industry, and make their platforms and approaches and challenges just a way of living your life and having a good time by doing something that's also helpful at the same time.
Oh, well, thank you so much. We actually got a question here. Michael asks, has there been any effort to incorporate the blockchain technology in the utility business operations?
So I'll tell you, I'm not the blockchain expert, but I do follow blockchain. And so what I believe is the current state of blockchain, and if I'm happy to take a name and provide you our expert within Navigant who studies blockchain and is top on top of it. But right now, blockchain, especially for distributed transactions, I think everyone believes that is the platform of the future, where there isn't the central clearing. That blockchain is going to do the verification, the validation, and the clearing of transactions. And so I believe the challenge at this point in time is making sure that the timing and the speed of blockchain being able to do these, dispersed and remote verifications and validations is still not fast enough to really accommodate utility transactions. But I believe, again, everyone's working on blockchain being one of the best technologies for especially transactional energy and a completely distributed future that we see.
Thank you so much. I actually have one last question. You had a slide with, I believe, Green Mountain Power. And I saw there's the Tesla Powerwall as well, and energy. I see that along with this customer engagement, companies are making beautiful designs for these personal microgrids. I was just wondering, do you think that trend will continue as they try to reach out to more people, again, like the active prosumers and people who want to be more sustainable and environmentally friendly, but not necessarily know as much as an expert?
Yeah, great question. Thank you very much. And this is just my own opinion, not necessarily shared by anyone at Navigant, but it also comes with a funny story that I just really am a fan of the Tesla Powerwall, and I think it's sort of the iPod equivalent of the energy space right now. And so if you go to figure out what kind of car charging and battery systems, you can either look at a Tesla Powerwall, or you can look at one of their EV charging competitors and their charger looks like a garbage can. And so I think that part of the design is going to be really important moving forward, that customers don't want things that look like a garbage can to charge their car if they can have something wonderful and amazing that goes with their wonderful and amazing car. And so I think design is going to become just as important as the features. And this is the customer experience that, especially for someone like me that's been in the utility business so long and doesn't always interact all the way out to the edge of the grid, I think that's the transformation that we're seeing right now, is that customers not only want things that are affordable and functional, but also are stylish and aesthetically pleasing. And I think the Tesla Powerwall is one of those great examples that you could have something that looks like a flat screen TV or something that looks like a trash can. I think it's pretty easy to know which way we will choose. And so I believe that's, again, the beginning of a trend for customers to make sure that as we talk about all the other functional things about the power grid and power use and all of this, that it's also aesthetically pleasing at the same time.
Thank you so much. And I definitely agree. And I love your comment that it's the Apple of the industry. And pardon me, I meant to say energy storage, but nonetheless, you understood what I meant. This one's a little bit, I think we'll end on this note. And thank you so much again, Laura, for your time today, and everyone who tuned in. Before you head out, I just want to say, if you'd like to listen to this recording again, as a reminder, you will receive an email of the recording of this webinar within 24 hours. And before you go, make sure to sign up for ERCOT Market Summit, which is coming end of February in Austin, Texas. Navigant will be there. Make sure to go to www.infocastinc.com/ERCOT for more information. Thank you again, Laura, and thank you everyone for your time today. Have a great day.
Thank you.